This is not comfortable for me at all, and only Sharon can get me up here. I wanted to first tell you guys, this is not from Hickey's. This is to hold my pain medicine patches up, so don't think I have hickeys, okay? Plus my husband's gone right now, so. Okay. I want to say I'm extremely honored to get to introduce my mother-in-law, and Sharon James, who's going to speak today, and I'll tell you a little bit about her. She was born and grew up in West Plains, Missouri, and next she lived in Kansas City, Missouri for 30 years, and then she moved to Osceola, Missouri on a ranch where she lived for 30 more years until her husband passed, Russ James, and then she came to live with us in Lubbock. After she came to Lubbock, let me tell you a little bit about her family. She has a daughter, Michelle, and my husband, Russell, who is quit the race right now because of his knee. So he only got 2 10Ks done, so anyway, but I will meet him in Greece on Saturday. And she also has 2 granddaughters, 1 grandson, and a great-granddaughter. Let me tell you a little bit about the first time I met Sharon. And I was terrified because my mom and her mother-in-law, the relationship was really, really bad. And so I was terrified to meet the mother-in-law. And I was totally blessed with Sharon. The first time I met her, she treated me like a daughter. And first time I met her, we went to visit her, and my fiance and it was before fiance, and it was the first time I was meeting my boyfriend's mom, and I brought along a pot holder to give to the mother-in-law when he came to visit, and she, like I said, she accepted me like a daughter, and she always has. And I've been blessed because when my mom's not there, she's always been there. And she's more of a mom to me than a mother-in-law. And she has been a spiritual mentor to me. And I can't wait to hear what she's going to teach you guys, because I've enjoyed every single talk she's given. Sharon James.
How close do I need this to my mouth? That sounds like it's still there, right?
No, closer. You want help?
I'm just broken.
No, it pops off.
Do you know how to do this?
No, I don't.
What happened to Gilda?
Better. Gilda.
She ran away. Did you blame her?
Anybody else? No? No takers? Anybody else?
Here comes Laura.
Oh, wait.
I can do it myself. fanfare for you to live up to.
It is, and I promise you, I did not tell her to say those things.
Are you gonna
She
move
didn't know what I
around,
was
or are you
gonna say.
No, I
gonna
stand right here.
You're good? Okay.
I want to thank you all for praying for me. I don't know how many of you told me you prayed for me, and I bet all of you did. And I needed it. But I think it's really working because last night I slept all night and I didn't have that dream that I so often have before I speak. I will dream I'm there at the event and I'll speak in like 10 minutes, and I've got all my notes left. The first time I met Esther, I thought I wanted to adopt her. And then the next time I saw her, she was in this really cute tennis outfit. And I thought, I'm sure my son is not thinking adoption here. Okay, the handouts are of the scriptures I'm using today, and these scriptures are far the most important words that will come out of my mouth. There was a man who loved his money. He was miserly. All of his life he held his money in a tight grip, but eventually he became ill and death was obviously coming soon. And he asked his wife to go to the bank, draw out all of his money, put it in a box, and bring it home. And then he told her to take the box up into the attic and leave it there. And he explained, when I die, on my way up to heaven, I will grab the money and carry it into heaven. Well, sometime after he had passed away, his wife decided to go up in the attic and gather up his things to give to the thrift store. Well, while she was in the attic, she happened to notice the box she put the money in was still there. And she opened the lid and looked inside, and all the money was still in the box, and she said, I knew I should have put it in the basement. Our lesson today concerns the parable of the rich fool in Luke 12. The aim of this lesson is to understand that our lives are not about the abundance of the things we possess. The parable of the rich fool begins in Luke 12:16, but I will start reading at verse 13 because it is significant to the parable. Let me set the stage. A very large group was around Jesus, but according to verse 1, Jesus was teaching his disciples, so it appears that at this moment he was not addressing the multitude of people. As Jesus was teaching, an argument broke out between two brothers who were in the crowd. And one of the brothers interrupts Jesus and demands, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the family inheritance with me." And Jesus replied, "Man, who appointed me a judge or an arbiter between you?" This was a civil case, a dispute in a temporary worldly domain. Judges and arbitrators have been appointed to settle matters like these. But Jesus was here to establish an eternal kingdom, the kingdom of God. Now the brother was correct in addressing Jesus as teacher. Jesus is the teacher with a capital T for deity. He is the divine teacher. We did not learn anything about the value of the inheritance causing the conflict between the brothers, but that is not important, even if the inheritance required great riches, it still would not be significant. In the kingdom of God, the brothers' relationship with each other is of greater importance. In comparison to eternity, the brother who has the estate will have it for about 10 minutes. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? In light of eternity, we are on this earth an extremely short time. James 4:14 puts it like this: what is your life? You are a mist that appears for a little while and then vanishes. As the divine teacher, Jesus turns this incident into a lesson about the dangers of greed. Luke 12:15, he said, watch out, be on your guard against all kinds of greed. Life does not consist in an abundance of possessions. 1 Peter 5:8 puts it like this: be self-controlled and alert. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. Sin is destructive. Sin separates us from God, and greed is sin. Jesus' words indicated to the brothers that they were being greedy. An inheritance seems to be a breeding ground for conflict. I'd like to share a story told to me by my supervisor when I was volunteering for hospice. The purpose of the story was to teach the hospice volunteers that when a person is in the dying process, that the hearing is the last thing to go. But this was not the only lesson in this story. True story. It goes like this. A woman was in the nursing home on hospice. She was in the dying process. Her grown children were called in and they gathered in her room. She was so near death, she was non-responsive. As they stood around their dying mother's bed, they were not using these last moments to hold her hand and tell her how much they loved her. They began talking about her possessions and who was going to get what. The conversation grew hostile and loud. The hospice nurse kept saying to them, take your argument out in the hallway. Your mother is probably hearing you. They repeatedly ignored her. As can happen occasionally, the dying woman revived, and she had heard everything. And she decided to teach her selfish children a lesson. She rewrote her will and they got nothing. Let's continue to read from the 12th chapter of Luke, starting with verse 16. Jesus is now addressing the multitude. And Jesus told them this parable. The ground of a certain rich man produced a good crop. And he thought to himself, what shall I do? I've no place to store my crops. Then he said, this is what I'll do. I will tear down my barns and build bigger barns. And there I will store all of my grain and my goods. And I'll say to myself, you have plenty of good things laid up for many years. Take life easy. Eat, drink, and be merry. But God said to him, you fool, this very night your life will be demanded of you. Then who will get what you have prepared for yourself? And this is how it will be with anyone who stores up things for himself, but is not rich toward God. The man in the parable illustrates well the danger of greed. His thoughts were of himself and his goods. He ignored some other very important considerations. First, He paid no attention to those around him that might be in need. Next, he ignored the certainty of death. And third, and most important, he had no regard for God. And God was the one who required his soul. What of his goods then? The rich fool's worldly possessions he worked so hard to obtain did not do anyone any good, including himself. Greed is a sin. It is not wrong to have things. God blesses us with possessions. The problem is when we start wanting more and more, and we're never satisfied. The things we think we want actually start to possess us, and we start serving our possessions. The rich fool does not have room to store his excess grain. Grain he didn't need even if he had lived. His plan was to tear down his ample-sized barns and build larger ones. That's a lot of work and expense. He was serving his possessions. And notice, it wasn't just grain that he needed storage for. He had many goods. Grain was not the only thing he was hoarding. He did not plan to share with those in need, even out of his abundance. His plan was to eat, drink, and be merry, but he never got there. Even if God had delayed an end in his life, I do not believe he would have ever gotten to the eat, drink, and be merry part. When he built his existing barns that are now full, he thought that would be enough. At the beginning of the planting season, the rich fool plowed and planted. Then all through the growing season, he cultivated his crop. He did all of this knowing he had no place to put the harvest. But he still wanted more. Even though he already had plenty, it was never going to be enough. He was greedy and he is serving his possessions. True joy comes from serving God and serving others, not earthly possessions. And generosity is a two-way blessing. It blesses both the receiver and the giver. If the rich fool had chosen to give just a portion of what he could not use to those in need, his life would have been much better, and also his eternity. Several years ago, when I lived in Missouri, I was leading a Tuesday morning Bible study class, and a lady named Joyce from another church was attending the study. As we became friends, she confided in me, and I began to learn that she had some hoarding tendencies. And it was causing conflict between her and her family. Her grown children were pressuring her to get rid of some of the clutter that was filling her house. She had so much stuff that it was getting impossible for her to clean. There was not enough room anymore for family to get together at her home. Her children tried to help her clean and organize the house, but she wouldn't let them throw away anything. Then her children hired a professional organizer, hoping this would help. And she was not happy about that. Well, one morning she came to Bible study class and she was excited, and she kept saying over and over she had a blessing from God. I couldn't wait to hear her blessing. I was glad for her until she told me what she was calling a blessing. The house across the street from her came up for rent. Yeah, you got there. She was going to rent the house and move all of her excess stuff into the rented house. She was happy because she wouldn't need to get rid of anything. And I feel sure she would continue going to garage sales and flea markets and buying more stuff. I tried to tell her this wasn't addressing the issue, and to get her to understand how much work and expense that was gonna be. She totally tuned me out. She loved her stuff, she was serving her possessions, and her goods were ruling her. Anxiously hoarding money or any possession just to die with it makes no sense. God called the rich man a fool because he was greedy. He wanted everything for himself, even what he could not use. He was not rich toward anyone but himself. Matthew 6:19-21. Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust can destroy, where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourself treasures in heaven, where moth and rust do not destroy and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. As human beings on this earth, we are all tempted to sin. Sin might look good, but it always turns out to be a burden. It makes life hard. God's way is easier. God's way is always, in all circumstances, better. Any sin separates us from God and his blessings that he desires to give to us. One of my very favorite scriptures, Matthew 11:28-30. Jesus says, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I'm gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your soul. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." I want to tell a story that I think is kind of an urban legend because I've read different versions, and this is my version. The father of two sons had passed away. The brothers were meeting at the office of the lawyer who was executor of the will. One brother had a wife and 3 children. The other was single. They both knew the conditions of the will. All of the assets were to be liquidated and the money divided between the 2 sons equally. The one with the family loved his father, but thought his father may have divided the estate equally because it was customary without considering all the circumstances of both sons. He wasn't happy with the way his father distributed the inheritance. Well, at the lawyer's office, the brothers were seated at a table. The executor had 2 checks of equal value. He placed one in front of each man. The brother with the family stated his reservations about the will. But before he could really say why, the single brother, nodding in agreement with his sibling, was saying, "You have so many expenses. Food, clothing, and shelter for 5 people. There's sports, dancing lessons, doctor bills. With this money, you could buy a larger house, have a college fund, take a vacation." The single brother picks up his check, reaches across the table, and places it on his brother's check. He is giving his brother his share of the inheritance. Well, astonished, the family man said, "That is not what I was thinking at all. I am blessed with a beautiful family. They continually bring me joy. I have a steady job that supplies all of our needs and most of our wants. You have always wanted to start your own business. This money, along with your skills and ambition, would guarantee a successful business." And he slides both checks back across the table to his brother. Well, how does the story end? Because of the generosity of these two men, instead of causing conflict, the inheritance strengthened the bond of love between the brothers. And that was what really mattered. 2 Corinthians 9:11. You will be made rich in every way so that you can be generous on every occasion. Proverbs 11:25. A generous man will prosper. He who refreshes others will be refreshed. And Luke 6:38. Give, and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over, will be poured into your lap. For with the measure you use, it will be measured to you.